All right, we are live. So,
Nice.
yeah, no, I just have a hard time always looking, right here.
Right at the camera.
This new look that we're doing. Yeah. But we're everyone, thank you for joining us for Dad Bods and Beards. We're doing a special live broadcast of our recording where today I felt like it was kind of this is kind of a special podcast to us, and it's something that Logan has been kind of leading up to, and it was
Kind of
talking.
alluding to.
He has bipolar,
Yeah.
and kind of what's been going on in his life, and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of want to just leave it up in the air and just kind of let you describe it, and then we can kind of move on from there. So,
Sure.
all right, floor is yours, Logan.
Well, so we've kind of alluded to this, right? Like we've mentioned different mental health topics, and I've mentioned little tidbits of my story, so to speak, and we've even said like, oh, we should probably have a whole episode where we talk about just the long journey of me, like from before I knew to like finding out, accepting, and then like the constant working battle that it is, right? So I think first and foremost, like I don't want to portray in the slightest that it's like we're 100% because mental health is a daily battle task, like
Absolutely.
something you got to work on, something like you have got to constantly be aware of because it's not something that goes away, right?
Mhm.
You can manage it better, you can see professionals, but we all know somebody in our life that can ebb and flow with different, and they all have different severities, right? So for me, like for the sake of not going back to like, well, in 1989 when Logan was born, like, like I mean, you and I and most of the people who listen to this, we grew up in an era where it was like, hey, I like your hat.
I know. I'm trying. It's
I
like
just
for some
realized
reason it's like lopsided, man.
we both grew up in the same. We got the same hat on, but like we grew up in an era where it was like no one really talked about it, right? Or it was starting to be more talked about, right? Obviously, our parents and our grandparents, it was like you didn't talk about depression, you didn't talk about anxiety, you sucked it up, you whatever. Um, and it was like ADHD and things like that were becoming more prevalent. So for me, as a 33-year-old man, going to be 34 here in a couple of months, I I was diagnosed with ADHD early on. I'd say right after I got married. Obviously, I think I knew for a long time I was because they did like the tests in middle school and high school, and it was kind of becoming more of a thing. But I
Mhm.
never got like medicated or like officially diagnosed with it until my 20s, and they started putting me on the really hard ADD meds. Like I was on Ritalin, I was on another one, and then I eventually ended up settling on Adderall. And I'm not going to get too much into my opinion about Adderall, but Adderall messed up my life really bad because Adderall is also probably one of the worst medications you can be on, like medications, not drugs, because essentially it's amphetamine salt. It's medical grade meth, right? I was on that in very, very, very high doses because my doctors just kept throwing it at me because it wasn't working. Turns out they weren't aware that I was also bipolar, and I
Mhm.
wasn't aware that I was also bipolar. Obviously, that's fast forwarding through years of being on Adderall, and I didn't find out that I was bipolar until 2017. So I had been on Adderall for almost 5 years, like very high doses. And so I'll get more into kind of that backstory of how that 5 years really, really shook me and my wife and our family. Um, but that's why I'm kind of a big proponent of like figuring out what is going on in your personal life because you might think that you have the answer to something, but if something still feels off, you may not realize that there's more to the story. I thought I was just ADHD. Turns out I was ADHD and also severely struggling from bipolar disorder, and then the Adderall was making it like that much more heightened because bipolar, unfortunately, it can range from just being depressed and super anxious to full on hallucinating, and
Yeah.
and which I did. Um, and that the Adderall kind of played into that. Like I was seeing things, hearing things, and I'll kind of get more of those. But um, I mean, it's weird to be sitting here so many years later and talking about this because it still hurts. Like it's still I still feel the feelings. You know what I mean? I still remember
Absolutely.
how I felt. I still remember feeling so low and so like I actually haven't said this word very much outside of like my inner circle, but like feeling suicidal and like thinking that was the answer or thinking about running away. So I know I've kind of teased all these different things. So kind of going back when I first got married in 2013, you know, when you move in with somebody and you start living together, aside from your regular family that grew up with you and everyone just thought that I was just crazy, goofy, you know, happy go lucky Logan,
Mm-hmm.
that intimacy of being married and living with someone every day and caring for someone on that level, my wife was noticing that I was off on this aspect, or like, you know, she noticed this new side of me that she didn't know before we lived together, and so on and so forth. So she kind of prompted me to go get officially tested as an adult and see kind of what was coming back. And that came back as ADHD. So that's when I got put on Adderall. Or on Ritalin first, and then moved my way up to Adderall. We thought that was the answer. I was super focused. I felt like, man, we talked about this, like the movie
Yeah.
Limitless, Bradley Cooper.
Uh-huh.
I felt like I found this miracle drug, and I'm like, oh my gosh, is this how everybody thinks? Because this is not fair. I feel like I have a superpower. Like I remember honestly thinking like I can slow down and think through my thoughts. I don't have to just
Mm-hmm.
impulsively act on everything. And it was these new drugs introduced into my system that I'd never had before, and I was like, oh my gosh, where has this been for the last 23 years of my life? And it was great for a long time, but then they don't last as long and you build up a tolerance. I have a high tolerance. Like I don't get a buzz from pain meds like when I've had knee surgery and things like that. Like they really don't work much for me. So I built up a tolerance to these ADHD drugs. And then they started putting me on Adderall because Adderall is a little bit more intense. And then they started putting me on more and more and more dosage. Meanwhile, my wife and I were progressing. You know, we've moved back to California. We've had our first baby, and now we are fast forwarding. I'd say to when everything was really hitting the fan was 2017. Um, mind you, for years I had been secretly battling and keeping a very good mask. People did not know that I was very very depressed, very very self-deprecating, and not in a funny way, like very self-defeating, um and out of privacy and respect for my wife, I'm not going to share all the details of everything that what it's like being married to somebody with a severe mental illness, let alone somebody who doesn't know that they have one.
Uh-huh.
um it can ruin your whole reputation. It can make you seem like you are the most irresponsible, anger driven, narcissistic person. Like it, I mean, it can destroy families because you're stuck in your own head. Like I just remember thinking, all I have to do, I just need to feel better. How do I feel better? No one can know that I'm struggling because you're living in a world where I'm like, I'm a husband, I am now a father, I have to provide, and I was not even able to do that. Like I had to. I don't know if you've ever been in a position where like you've had to go to friends or family for like, hey, this happened at work, or this, you know, like, hey, this came up, the car broke down, I need some extra money,
Yeah, I've been there
right? Or like
before.
I was at a point where I was relying on pretty significant regular financial help from some people in my life because I wasn't cutting it. I was in a sales industry making basically no sales because I was so mentally gone.
Mm.
I remember I worked with my dad for 2 years and I was so good at putting on a mask that I was fine. He had no idea. I worked two desks down from my dad.
Oh, wow.
And every day at lunch, I would go sit in my car in the parking lot and I would just sob. And I mean, just like ugly cry. And I would eat my feelings. That's where I started becoming very, very overweight, very unhealthy because I was just the rush of, you know, eating McDonald's or something like that. And so that's where I developed like my food addiction. And so like you can see here like all of the different, like just the domino effect. Like it's like you pulled the wrong brick on Jenga and just I'm just constantly trying to rebuild the Jenga tower. but they're
Do you
just
think your
falling
wife
out.
could she tell that something was wrong?
Oh yeah, she could, but she's now a mother
Yeah.
hanging on for dear life
Okay.
because the guy that she thought she married turned out to be very unstable, and she had no way of knowing that. I didn't know that. Um, there was a lot of things that I think that I could have done better to set myself up or set us up, or even maybe members of my family would have, if they'd have noticed certain things earlier on or recognized certain things earlier on, I could have gotten help earlier.
Can I
But
ask what those things are? Not just for people who might be suffering and not realizing it, like they're depressed, they have anxiety, all this kind of stuff.
yeah,
So, if you can, just let everyone know, like, what are the warning signs?
so specifically, I'd say for like bipolar, right? Because so like depression and anxiety and things like that, they kind of float amongst a lot of different mental health issues, right? They can be
Uh huh.
kind of subcategories or they can be the main thing. One thing that bipolar individuals have a problem with, so there's bipolar 1 and there's bipolar 2, and one is more depressive and one is more manic, like crazy, off your rocker.
Yeah, and that's kind of the
Um,
one that I know about.
yeah, so like there's a stereotypical joke of like, oh, I'm just being a little bipolar right now, like basically like I'm being a little crazy, a little off my rocker, a little whatever. So I was diagnosed as the more manic bipolar in the beginning because I was unable to focus on anything other than trying to like on myself. It's very narcissistic.
Mm-hmm.
So like it erodes your interpersonal relationships. Like I was very cold and mean at times to my wife. I was unintentionally financially abusive because I would not make enough money to provide for my family, let alone bringing children into the world. And so I wouldn't involve her in finances because I was, borrowing money from so and so to just pay the rent. And then when I pay the rent, that wasn't be enough. And then we had the car payment. The car payment would be 3 months behind. Thankfully, in the grand scheme of things and on the spectrum of like some other bipolar stories out there, like I was actually very mild at times because there are people that have blown their entire life savings and then bipolar individuals have a very addictive, they get very heavy into drugs, very heavy into alcohol, very heavy into sex addiction, you name it, because you're chasing something to make you feel better because you would just feel so dark. And then one of the biggest struggles that I had was that I was hallucinating. And because I grew up in a very religious household, I was hallucinating that there was a very specific demon following me. And I would see him and he would talk to me in my head. He would show up at the foot of my bed and I could never see his face specifically, but it's like I knew what he looked like. I knew what he sounded like. He would tell me the worst things about myself because it was myself. My One thing that I learned with bipolar is that the human brain is capable of so much. It's scary.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There and that was the signs where like my wife was like it hit a point where this is maybe kind of one of the darkest one of the two darkest parts I'll share is that there was a night where my wife and I it would send me to tailspins when we would have arguments because
And
then
don't share what I mean. Don't feel like you need to
no
share.
no I'm not I when I would get into arguments, I would get I get this thing called amygdala hijack. So your amygdala is your fight or flight sensor or center, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mine kind of gets hijacked. And I'm still working with a psych to this day, and I've got on a really good treatment plan that's actually helped quite a bit. But at the time, I would get stuck in the like, I'm not letting go times 10. Like we've all been in those arguments where you're like, you can't calm down, you're not letting go of it, whether it's with a spouse, a partner, a sibling, a friend, whatever. And I would just steamroll and steamroll. And my wife, Tyson, you've met her. She's an absolute
Sweetheart.
sweetheart. I say this a million times over. If you have a problem with my wife, you are more than likely the problem because she is absolutely the sweetest person in the world. And she married somebody who was just completely unhinged at the time. And I, and she had no idea of knowing. So that's
Mm-hmm.
not anything negative towards her. So but once I would kind of come down a little bit out of these arguments, I would start feeling like I'm a piece of garbage. I am treating this wonderful woman like crap. Da, 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 da. And then I would just get lower and lower and lower and lower. And then it would be like almost like DID, which is like like the split personality, um, where like I would have these possession moments because it's like growing up in a very religious household at the time. I believed in, very intense heaven and hell type aspects, or like angels and demons. So they were a very real thing to me at the time. So I, being very religious, felt like I was being possessed by this demon that, like, I won't share the details of like, dude, I like to this day I can still hear his voice in my head, even though I know he's not real. I remember his name. I remember what he looks like. And I remember like just the feel, like the presence, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I felt possessed at this time, which was a full blown manic episode, right? You've seen people homeless, people that are, very, very far off their rocker or gone. And they seem like they're stuck in their own little world. Sometimes that's a very severe mental health issue. And I was kind of in that moment in my little life that nobody would have known. Like, I was very good at hiding this stuff. But that night, I was pounding my head on the front door, screaming, "Get out of my head." And my wife was like, "Logan, what's wrong?" And I turned around and in a very scary voice told her, "Logan's not here." And that was a very, very dark time. I mean, it terrified
Oh
my wife.
yeah.
She was pregnant with our second son, so you can imagine the stress that put on her. Like, she was in the third. I'm pretty sure she was in her second trimester. So very dangerous stress levels for my pregnant wife at the time. And that triggered the, okay, there is something seriously wrong. You're going to go see a psychiatrist.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just years of, me stretching the truth and lying and things like that, because there were time periods that I didn't remember because I would block them out of like self-preservation because it was too much to handle, that I didn't know what was going on in my life. I didn't know what was going on. Like, I was like, why is my brain so broken? I don't smoke. I don't drink. I don't do hard drugs. Like, I don't do anything to like hurt my brain. Why is it broken?
To warrant
And
what
then,
you're feeling.
yeah. And so then that would lead me to like, I am destroying my wife's life and she does not deserve this. I have a beautiful little girl and a son on the way. I have life insurance. They'll be better off without me. I could just disappear. I could take off, dude. I had letters, and I only recently in the last year or so destroyed them. Like, I kept them, and
Oh wow.
I would reread them to myself, like my final letters to my wife.
Dang. Just recently.
Yeah, within the last year, and that's the kind of stuff that still gets to me, is like reading younger Logan's words and thinking that life wasn't worth living, and like thinking that there was a moment in my life where leaving my children without their father was like the best idea I had at the time to better their life. That I felt that I was such a detriment in the lives of my wife and my children and other people that I had been a burden on that had helped me, that it was best if I just didn't exist anymore. And I can promise you, and anybody that has ever felt that, that's never the answer, because the hole you will leave in the lives of the people that need you and care for you is far greater pain than what you're feeling. And so I think seeing, like, I can still see my wife's face in that moment, her
Mm-hmm.
like sitting on the floor holding her stomach because she was pregnant, screaming because I was full manic episode. Um, that was something I kind of held on to when it was time for treatment. And so some family members and my wife and kind of banded around, of it wasn't like an intervention moment. It was a, you know, my brother who I work with, I was living in California at the time, he was living in Utah, and he basically called me and said, "You're sick. It's okay to be sick." He said, "I made you a sorry." He said, "I made you a psych appointment. Dad's going to take you. You're either going to go, or I'm going to fly out there and I'm going to drag you there myself." But thankfully he didn't have to do that. But it wasn't over at that point. That wasn't like, "Okay, we're great. Let's go get this fixed." So that night we felt it was best for me to go stay at my parents, so that my dad could, I don't know, let my wife process, um, so that I go stay at my parents and wake up and kind of like be under my dad's kind of care at the time and take me to my psych appointment. Um, well, that night, I think with everything going on and the realization of like where I was at, what was going, I'm laying in my old bedroom at my parents' house in a twin bed by myself as a man who's supposed to be at home with his pregnant wife and his daughter taking care of. I'm supposed to be the guy taking care of everything, but I'm the one broken. I snapped and I blacked out, and my phone had died, and I woke up 3 miles away from where I was supposed to be in the middle of the night. I had ran down a 2-lane road where there's no lights, and I ended up in a pharmacy parking lot, and I had no idea where I was at the time. I think subconsciously at this point, I think I was trying to go home, but I don't remember leaving my parents. I don't remember running down that road. I ran 3 miles, at the time, or walked 3 miles, or an hour and a half. I don't know exactly how long it took me to get there, but I got there, and thankfully there was a guy there in the parking lot. Everything was closed. He let me use his phone. I called my wife, and she was ecstatic, or not ecstatic,
Yeah.
erratic. I can't even think of the word.
Are you still on Adderall at this time?
No, 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 no. That
Okay.
was like, my psych was like, get off the Adderall. So
Okay.
I'll get
No,
to
no,
that.
not are you on it currently? I mean, at this time when you're running and you're blacked out, you
Oh,
find
yeah, yeah,
yourself in
yeah.
the pharmacy. Are you still on Adderall?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
100%. Because I'm thinking this stuff is helping me, right?
Yeah.
Mind you, during this whole time period, months leading up to this, like I was not a sleeper. I mean, I would sleep maybe 8 to 12 hours a week. Like I
Mhm.
was a couple hours a night up for a couple of days. Like I had a night job. I like founded like a night gig to keep me busy. But I woke up in this pharmacy parking lot, and come to find out my parents are out looking for me. So are the local police. My parents show up. It was a whole fiasco. I'm like frantic, like in shock, don't know where I am. Um, and the local police show up, and they start trying to talk to me. Obviously, they're very much more equipped to handle situations like this. I was not dangerous to anyone. They were more worried about that I was dangerous to myself. I was just kind of panicked of like, where am I? What's going on? Like, mom, just let me in the car. I just want to go home. And like the police were telling, like, hey, let's step away from mom's car. And then dad shows up, and and I'm on the phone with my wife, and she's crying, almost yelling, rightfully so. Like, stop acting like this is okay. Stop acting like you can just go home. Stop acting like this is not a major problem. And um, it finally got to the point where, and I still keep her card in my wallet. Um, the police officer who was able to bring me down, she's a sweetheart. Her name was Officer Katie Cooley. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
And I think she was, whatever you believe in, she was the person in that moment, even though I had people in my life that were my people,
Mhm.
she was the person in that moment that was equipped to get me voluntarily to take a ride with her down to the emergency room. And she talked to me the whole way there. It's the only time I've ever it's the only time I've ever been in the back of a police car, but it was completely voluntary. And she charged my phone and for me so that I could, have my phone while I was in the emergency room. And she just said, why don't you come with me? If I bring you in, voluntarily, I can get you into the back door of the emergency room, and we can get you straight into a room privately. No one has to see anything. And if I bring you in, it will be an emergency care situation. She's like, it will be the best thing for you. So she just calmed me down, was able to break through to me, and I was I would be interested to see, like, kind of maybe if she still has like her dash cam or whatever that conversation was, because I remember her I was so doom and gloom. Like, I thought it was over. I was still probably talking to her very suicidal, and she didn't she didn't stop, like, she didn't just drop me off and leave. She stayed in that room with me for a long time, and she gave me her card, and she said, "I want you to call me in 5 years." She's like, "Because I have no doubt in my mind that you're gonna be fine." So 5 years was actually last October, and I reached out to her in email. So we email back and forth now. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, but I owe her part of my life for sure, because she was part of the group that saved me. Because I think, had she not taken me there, I don't know where I would have kind of ended up that night. Um, but I stayed in the emergency room for a few hours, kind of got stable, was able to go home, and then the next morning, both my mom and my dad took me to a psych office. Um, and that was a whole another experience. I was so traumatically spent at that point, not sleeping, all that stuff. I couldn't even remember my filling out the paperwork. I think my mom and dad had to do it because I couldn't remember my birthday. I couldn't remember how old I was. Like, I just was so like spent. And sitting down with the psych, and she was amazing. She just, within like 15 minutes, she was like, "You are bipolar." And she's like, "Well, you may have tendencies of ADHD." And then as soon as she found out I was on Adderall, she's like, "You need to be off of that yesterday."
No. Mm-hmm.
She said, "How?" She instantly started, appropriately grilling me. "How many pills do you have left?" And I said, "I think I have 4." She's like, "Hey, you have 4 to wean yourself off." She's like, "You can break those up or whatever." And she's like, "It's going to be a hell of a time." She's like, "Because you're taking medical grade meth." She's like, "You're and the dosage that I was on was really heavy."
Mm-hmm.
And I became addicted to it without knowing that I was addicted to it. Because it's an upper. It keeps you awake, keeps you pumping, keeps you focused or whatever. But it can also be it's one of the worst drugs for somebody who deals with bipolar, because it can pretty much become a hallucinogenic. So
Yeah.
the Adderall is what was making me manic. The Adderall was like supercharging my manic episodes. So she said that getting off of the Adderall will be one of the first steps that I had to do. And I don't remotely act like I understand what somebody who's had an addiction battle,
Mm-hmm.
but I will tell you that that was one of the roughest weeks of my life, getting off of Adderall. I felt like somebody was driving a stake through my head.
Oh.
The most pain, like the most eye piercing migraines and like shakes and sweats, and like I couldn't sleep, and like I get like jittery thinking about it. Like, I'm kind of shaking right now. And
Were
so
you
I've done,
home at this time, or were you in
yeah,
a
no,
treatment center?
I that's what I'm saying. I think I'm grateful for the fact that I wasn't so far gone that I
Mm-hmm.
needed to be admitted. Like, I could have voluntarily, and I think she was giving me the option to pursue things on my own, with help, before that was like strongly suggested or even involuntarily suggested.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I was able to get off of it, and one of the first things that she did was prescribe me a very heavy sleeping medication, because she's like, "You have got to sleep." She's like, "With bipolar, if you don't sleep," she's like,
It's
"it's already hard for people who don't struggle with this when they don't sleep." She's like, "You've got to." So I mean, I was like taking pills and going straight to sleep. And so I think
mm-hmm.
I slept the hardest I had ever slept, but at the same time also like fighting this wean off battle. And anybody who knows mental health meds knows that there's very few that are like instant changes. Adderall is like an instant release type one, right? But anything that's for like depression, anxiety, bipolar, things that are personality disorders, mood disorders, they take time. They can take weeks,
Yeah,
they can
3 to
take
4
months.
weeks.
Yeah, and then you can be like, "Oh, not the right one. So I think I went
Mm-hmm.
through months of medication changes, trying, oh man, Lamictal, bupropion. They all have these crazy names, right? And then lithium, all kinds of stuff. Basically, what this has all boiled down to is that it's I used to listen to this podcast, and the guys on there said that mental health is, and I've said this before, mental health is not your fault, but it is your responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very grateful for the fact that I was able to be at a point where I was able to see that I was at a turning point of I was gonna be this very, very, very long road, which I am 100% still on. Like I am not like, hey, everything's perfect, but I am in a hell of a lot better space than I was. That it's a constant battle. I mean, you know that. Like
Yeah.
it's we all go through seasonal up and downs, and some people struggle with stuff. I know you've shared some of your stuff here and there, but it's it is black and white in the sense of either you're going to fight it and you're going to battle it either for yourself or the people in your life, or you're going to just give into it and let it kind of take control of your whole life. So this is so cliche and I hate saying it. Part of me is grateful for all the struggles that I went through, but then part of me is very, very angry still about it because it affected my wife so much. And one statistic I want to share that really, really, really hit me hard and kind of really drove my battle
Mm-hmm.
was that over 95, I can't remember exactly if it's 95 or 97% of bipolar marriages end in divorce because the other spouse has to start focusing on their own mental health because it is so taxing. Like it is literally like a PTSD moment. Like my wife had to start going to like stress tests while she was pregnant because of everything I was putting her through. So, I mean, that's kind of like the snapshot of like what got me to like being diagnosed bipolar. But then
Yeah.
there's the whole aspect of, have you ever heard of cognitive behavioral therapy?
Yes. Is it that's where they move their hands really fast back and forth?
No, what's that one? I know some people who've done that one.
Well,
Um,
my therapist did that with me, but I swear that was, but,
yeah,
um, no,
I
but
think
explain what it is.
so. I think therapy in general, if you have any type of therapy you're going to, I think is great.
Mm-hmm.
I think the times of guys beating down other guys for going to therapy is and should be over. And I think it's a
Yeah,
sign
I
of
don't think it's a thing anymore.
no, because I view it more as a sign of strength for somebody who is so self-aware that they can go and talk to someone about like the inner battles that they're fighting. Because there's so much going on that we don't need to freaking sack up like that.
Yeah.
Like, go get your stuff figured out. I promise your life will be so much better. Like I'm living proof of it. But
It's
like
kind of
it's
like
a
when you go to the doctor because you have a cold or something. Come to find out, you have pneumonia. You could have died if you just would have went a couple days before. You would have been
yeah,
fine.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's
I
it's
know
okay to
like
take care of yourself.
well, and at the same time, like I know like there's all of like the big pharma and the health industry and yada yada. Like that can really people can have their opinions there and that can turn you off. I get it, but
Absolutely.
for me, a big game changer for me was cognitive behavioral therapy. So I started getting on regular visits with my psychiatrist. And so I would say, before I kind of get into the cognitive behavioral stuff, family doctors are great. General practitioners are great. They are experts, they are doctors, they have degrees, they know their stuff. But when it comes to your brain, I 100% would suggest if it is a serious situation, needing to see a psychiatrist because a psychiatrist is a brain expert. Like
Yeah.
the way your brain fires your neurons, your thought process, the chemical balances. It's kind of like there's your general mechanic, and then there's the guy that just rebuilds motors. You know what I mean? Like there's the guy that can fix your whole car, and then there's the guy that like, yeah, I can do this, but I specifically love rebuilding motors, and they're like a savant. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's their specialty. So my psychiatrist, who is very well versed in bipolar, she was almost like a bipolar specialist. So I was really grateful to get in to see her. She's like, you need to do cognitive behavioral therapy, and what or yeah, CBT, what it is it helps you literally break down like the layers to find out why you are the way that you are, how you tick, because unfortunately, medication doesn't change habit. Medication doesn't change your personality. Medication doesn't solve every single issue. It just balances you and pretty much keeps you from being suicidal,
Okay.
right?
Hmm.
Medication is not the sole thing. You've got to like, and when I say this, like I don't try to, I'm not trying to come off like an expert. Like I don't know if it comes off that
No,
way.
you're talking like you've gone through something severe in your life, and you're talking about it.
Oh, okay, well, good, because I don't wanna ever come off of like, "Hey, like, I'm an expert in this now." It's like, no, I'm just somebody I've gone through it, and I've seen people battle it, and some people who refuse to, who just kinda, like, wanna raw dog it and like, "Oh, I don't take medication." Which that's your choice. For
So
me, I kind
I
of
will add this though, because I don't mean to interrupt,
yeah,
but I have a loved one, and I'm not going to say who it is. Was married.
yeah,
After about 20 plus years, they got a divorce, and about 6 months later, found out that he had bipolar, and
yeah,
so what you're talking about is so relevant to everyone out there that if that's why I asked you, what are the precursors? What are things people should look out for? Because you are absolutely right that usually bipolar does end in divorce, and half the time I swear they don't even know until when it's over. So
mm-mm.
you've been very blessed, and I want you to keep continuing. But I just want to know that you're a huge inspiration to me and everyone that's listening, and I'm grateful for you. So keep going.
Well, thanks, man. No, I appreciate that. I mean, kind of to maybe even reiterate this of like the major signs of bipolar for me looking back that if I could put my thumb on it was like you almost have narcissistic tendencies because you are so focused on trying to appear as though everything is fine, but you are making very, very bad in like even, you know, abusive financial decisions. You start having some very addictive personalities, hallucinating, or seeing things that aren't there, hearing things that aren't there, major depression, like dangerous depression, and just like falling down the rabbit hole anxiety, like panic
Hmm.
attacks, can't breathe, like just very, very severe, like something is wrong. And then I think kind of the cocktail of those things happening together. But the thing is like I said, you may not have bipolar. You may just have, I mean, just anxiety or just depression or both or personality disorder or like I said, I mean, there's people who have such traumatic lives that they literally create split personalities. It's a real thing. Like it's not just something in movies. It's so I kind of use my hyperfixation because that's one thing that also comes with bipolar and sometimes is commonly misdiagnosed as just ADHD because you become hyper focused. Right? So like here's like the spectrum that most people are on with their mental health. Like here's your highs and here's your lows. Most people that don't struggle with any kind of mental health, they operate kind of like a mid-range pendulum swing, right?
Yeah,
If you're bipolar, you can span the whole spectrum and it
within
can
seconds.
switch. So I would get well, and for me, I would get rapid cycling. I could be super, super high on a feeling, thinking it was going to be this and this and this and this. And then I'm not kidding, an hour later, like suicidal. And it was
Mm.
dangerous. And I got very, very good at hiding it. I got very, very good at putting on a mask to the point that I remember my dad, he went to the psychiatrist with me. He sat in the office with me. My mom stayed out in the waiting room, but I remember my dad went into the appointment with me. And him, bless his heart, he didn't know. Like this is the first time. I mean, he's sitting here with his adult son in a psychiatrist's office. And she's talking about medication and stuff. And my dad's saying, well, he's like, well, we don't, what does this do? What does that medication do? Whatever. He's like, because we don't want to lose Logan. We don't want him to just be kind of like a zombie. And she said, I remember her saying to my dad, the Logan that you think that you know is not the Logan who's sitting next to you.
Yeah.
So that was hard because that was somebody that I didn't know who saw me, who like, she saw right through every mask I was wearing within 15 minutes because she was trained to. She knew what to look for. She knew what to like. That's why I'm such a huge proponent for like professionals because she like I mean, she had me pegged within 15 minutes, like down to like the you are this. And I know not everybody has that great of an experience, but like I'm super grateful for that because not that it's any, anything negative towards my dad. She's like the Logan that is the Logan that is trapped in there that needs to come out, he needs some help. And that's what it was someone telling me that I needed to hear was that I was trapped in my own head. And I think that mixed with the conviction, I know it's easier said than done. I can't really explain the conviction I had at that time to not leave my wife and my children alone, to not cause that grief in their life. And you know me, I'm stubborn as hell. I was like, that's it. Like, I'm not going to be the statistic. I'm not going to be the guy. Um, and I'm not saying that this is some Cinderella story. Like in that moment, everything was fine. Like it has still been years. And traumas and things that my wife and I are working through, things that she still needs to work through on her own. There are entire groups that are specifically meant for spouses and partners of bipolar individuals, like support groups. And kind of going back to the cognitive behavioral therapy, the reason she suggested that was because she said medication is going to balance you and stable you, but you have got to put in the work to find out who you are and how you got this way. She said, because financial bad habits is not going to be fixed with a pill. Emotional, financial, you know, abuse is not going to be fixed with a pill. Yeah, self-deprecating, all of these things they're not going to be fixed with a pill. A pill will keep
Mhm.
me present and on the earth and will keep me from losing my ever loving mind over small situations that somebody who's balanced should be able to process. So the cognitive behavioral therapy helped me figure out where my traumas were, where my triggers were, where helped me understand that when I am presented with this situation, don't hide it and lie to avoid being viewed in this way, because when you try to fix it yourself and you're not emotionally, mentally, physically able to, you're going to make it 10 times worse by, robbing Peter to pay Paul, so to speak, not literally, but like,
Yeah.
hey dad, I need this and this and this because this happened, when in reality of like, I've been so mentally gone and depressed. I haven't made X amount of sales and I don't have enough money to pay my rent, little on my car payment or my health insurance. Like, and I mean, I could go down that rabbit hole forever. So it was that, and I have ebbed and flowed through the years, man. Like I was good for a long time, and then I had some really hard time period where some people close in my life, there was some issues there, and that sent me into a really bad tailspin. Um, but where I would say, kind of rounding that all out and not just continuing to just kind of go down this hole. The psychiatrist that I have now that we live here in Utah, um, I freaking love this guy. I think he personally is on the autism spectrum, and I freaking love it because is he is black and white, man. He just tells me, he would tell me straight as it is. He's like, nope, that's not working. That's actually a really dumb thought. Don't think like that. And he's like,
Oh, nice.
I'm going to switch you to this medication. And he's like, I'm going to switch you to this medication. We're going to try it. And I love like I've been sitting in a meeting with him and he's eating a sandwich, like, cause he's just like, I'm hungry. Like, he's like, I gotta get this. I'm gonna help you. And like, I'm like, dude, I jive with this because like, you're just getting stuff done. You're helping me get stuff done. Um, and so he has got me. I mean, dude, I have been on medication cocktails like you wouldn't believe. Like
Mhm.
this many, this time of day, this many, that time of day, bedtime, this one to go to sleep, this one for the anxiety, this one for the depression. And there would be times where I would run out or I would forget and I would, and then you drop off and it's just, I mean, you can imagine. This guy has worked with me so intensely that I'm on one pill a day and I am on another treatment plan that I feel the most balanced and like straight laced I have in years. And I've been this way for a few years now because of this man's help. And I think I would not be in the position that I am today without the help of the profession, not just the professionals, but I would not 100% mentally, physically, or literally being here on this earth if it were not for my wife.
That's
And
amazing.
I owe her literally my life because the pain and the suffering and the abuse that that woman has gone through on my behalf because I have been sick, I I can't pay her back. So I try. That's what I do. I try. And some days I do good and some days I still fail. And I still try. That's the most that I can do. And um like I said, just being respectful of her and everything that she's gone through, and not sharing every intimate detail of everything. I feel bad because I feel like there are years that I've taken from her because she has been so focused on survival mode of raising our children and and just trying to exist while I am over here just have had times of just absolute whirlwinds and her hanging on for dear life. So I would say to like anybody out there that is struggling in the slightest, like if there's someone in your life that you care about, if you can't do it for yourself, do it for them because they don't deserve their quality of life to be lessened because you are struggling. You've got to focus on yourself, but if you've committed yourself to someone else or another, if you've got children, people that rely on you, you have some kind of a, you know, intimate relationship, you owe it to them to get yourself taken care of. And essentially where this kind of boils down to for me, and like I said, is it's a daily constant thing, a daily constant battle. I I go through periods of time where I kind of, for lack of a better term, cringe moments of like, I can't believe, I did that at this stage in my
Hmm.
life. I still can't believe that I did that. And there's times where I beat myself up where I'm like, man, I'm at this stage in my life, but had I had this figured out 10 years ago, where would I be today? And I think ultimately you can't do that. I think it's easier said than done. I think we all do it. You know what I mean? But yeah, man, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to get kind of emotional. Like I'm good. Like I'm solid in knowing that I'm staying. There's nothing like I've fought through the demons that almost took me, and I'm never gonna leave my wife and kids in that manner.
Yeah.
But I still remember the feelings.
Do you so it's been 2 years, you said a few years. Um of you on this medication and figuring out what's going on so that you can kind of be present like you said and able to work through your other issues that you're talking about. Um do you find yourself still putting on a mask, so to speak?
Um, yes and no. I think sometimes I have a healthier mask because
Okay.
um one thing I learned during that time period of my life was I was very vulnerable years prior, before I was diagnosed back in 2017, and then after I was diagnosed, um I was very vulnerable and would kind of overshare with certain people in my life, and sometimes that came back to bite me. Um And so I think during that time period, and Robert and I have talked about this
Hmm.
because of some of the stuff that he's dealt with, you learn that there are certain boxes that you put people in for your own mental health preservation, and that there are certain people that deserve the full story, and there are some people that deserve the Cliff Notes version.
Absolutely.
So I put on a mask, I guess, in an appropriate way with some people of like not to overshare and to, I guess, boundaries. Boundaries is a better word. Boundaries is a healthy word.
Hmm.
Like, um, I think I've learned more boundaries, and it took a long time. And I think that's a maturity lesson too, because you learn that just because there's a certain relationship, it doesn't mean that they're entitled to certain things. And
Yeah.
then you come to find out there are other people in your life like you that I came across that you have pretty much learned my entire story in a year and a half, that there are some people that will never know besides like my wife or maybe a handful of other people.
And you're the same way.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying is that's a healthy relationship and not
Mhm.
a detrimental relationship, not something that you can, you share with somebody and worry that it's going to come back to bite you or be used against you, and one of the kind of the last things that I want to say is just kind of, even my brother and I, we had our ups and downs through my battle. We had a time period where we did not get along, and now we work together. But I go back to one of the things that he'd said was that it's okay to be sick. It's okay to not
Mhm.
be okay, but it's not okay to not take care of yourself. Because I don't mean to be cliche and I don't mean to get all choked up again. I don't freaking care whatever your brain is saying. This world is a better place with every single freaking one of us in it. Whether you believe in this or that or creation or your reincarnation, I don't freaking care whatever your belief system is. You are here for one reason or another, whether it's completely random or it is of a grand design. You have a purpose here on this life, and you don't know who you can positively impact or who you can negatively impact, but it's your job to just have an impact on somebody and just try to do the best that you can, because we're all literally fighting our own battles. And that's why I say some of the stuff that I say of like some of the things that people say to people. And I remember how I was of like, man, if I'd have heard that 6 years ago, I'd have lost it.
Mhm.
So I think like reach out to someone. There is, if it's not this person, it's the next person. Like find somebody to talk to. And if you don't have someone in your life that, like I did, like I was blessed to have certain people in my life, like especially like my wife, my father-in-law, my dad, my brother, people who saw that, okay, it's time to start fixing this. There are so many treatment centers. There are so many doctors. There are so many therapists. There are so many professionals that, and we know so much more now than we even did 5 years ago, 6 years ago when I was diagnosed. And I think this time of year I start to kind of get this mentality, because this is when it was happening.
Mhm.
Is I was diagnosed in October of 2017. So the end of summer, beginning of fall was like my most unhinged moment about 6 years ago. So that's that's kind of why I am the way that I am. That's why I think my perspective has changed on how I see people and treat people. The religion I was raised in, I tried to look more at the person than I do through like whatever goggles I was, I had of my beliefs or my standards or whatever. So I think everyone deserves a chance in life to be heard, and everyone deserves a chance to live, you know?
Well, if one thing I do know about you is you have a crazy amount of empathy. And you try to understand everyone before you say anything, which is a really good skill to have. And I appreciate you always listening to me, because my life is chaotic right now. And you allow me just to, I don't even know if I vent very much. Well, I vent, but I mean more of some things really stress me out, and you're able to
Yeah.
listen, and it's definitely a skill set that you have, and I appreciate you. And you, like I said, I wish I could speak like you, because you have such a way of words that just help motivate and inspire everyone. So thank you for sharing today, and just
Yeah.
know that if no one else is listening, you affected me today, and I learned a lot. So I appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you too, man. And I appreciate you saying that, because that was one thing that I really lacked for years was empathy. Because that's another sign of bipolar. You don't have the ability to care about anybody else.
Hmm.
Like it like I said, it erodes your interpersonal relationships. That's why it causes divorce.
Yeah.
That's why people that's why people who are bipolar end up committing suicide, because they have nobody left sometimes, because they literally ruin their own relationships. And so I was ruining my own reputation, man. Like I came from a family that had a long reputation on my mom's side and my dad's side. And I was always a good kid, like growing up, like I was viewed as a good kid. And then I just started making, I remember feeling so freaking terrible, because I was like, I am not the man that I promised my father-in-law I was going to be for his daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I remember feeling, and that's a whole nother story, man. Like that man has been so supportive. I mean, to have a guy marry his daughter and put her through what I've put her through, and him still being like he's probably one of my best friends too. I talk to that guy more like a friend than I do my father-in-law. And every time I see that guy, every time I talk to that guy, how you doing, man? He's like, are you okay? Like, what can I do for you? So my point being is like find your people, and learning empathy has been a big hard lesson for me. Like learning how to be empathetic and like finding the right medication and the right doctor to allow those empathetic feelings to exist. Like it's almost kind of like the Adderall helped me like, oh my gosh, this is how people focus. But like my current treatment plan is kind of like, what is this new emotion? Like what is like learning empathy is like a 33-year-old, like 30, 31, 32, 33-year-old man, and like feeling other people's emotions. Like I still have a lot to learn about it because there's still times where I am not as super empathetic to my wife, to my children, to people I work with, and I still have my limits. But so I appreciate you saying that, but it's a daily battle,
Well,
man.
that's
Like it's
just like you said. I will never compare myself to you or anything like that, but I will say that I don't have bipolar. I'm not bipolar at all, at least not
yeah.
that I'm aware of. But I do suffer from anxiety and depression, and sometimes it's crippling.
Oh
And
yeah.
I went and saw the therapist the very first day. He's like, "Oh yeah, I know exactly what's wrong." And
Right. Like it's like
he's like, "You have codependence disorder. Something happened when I was a child that made me have to work really hard to gain acceptance from people. So as the harder I work, the more like, oh, you're doing such a good job. So I that's how I felt loved, and I just and
yeah.
so like people pleasing all that kind of stuff, and I felt everyone's emotions and if I felt like I like offended someone, even if not on purpose, it would affect me, and it
Oh
still
yeah.
does sometimes. And it got to the point where I'm like, I'm miserable. I got to go see someone, and therapy has changed my life. Um,
Well,
and
yeah, that's what I'm
even
saying.
the way you and I communicate is a lot different than how I would have communicated before therapy.
Well, that's good, man. I mean, and that's what I'm saying is like I wish I could convey to people like how it feels to like recognize a difference in yourself when you're like, whoa, I did not see it from this perspective. Because
Hmm.
it's really hard to be self-aware. Like being self-aware is something that like people will say like, oh, I'm super self-aware, and that means that like you're just more aware of how you are in public, or maybe you don't, there's some people that don't have as much common sense, right? And we're like, oh, the person who's got their cart in the middle of the aisle at Walmart, they're not very self-aware. Like, no, I'm talking about like how you come off in the sense of like in a healthy manner, like how you treat people, how you talk to people, how you treat yourself, what's your reputation? Are you the same guy when nobody's around, or or as when you're with around a bunch of other people? So, um, it's amazing what you will find out about yourself when you talk to the right person. And I mean professional, whether it's a therapist, a doctor, or a psychiatrist. And my whole thing is there are certain instances where certain people might be a little bit too far gone, not too far gone that you're broken, you're lost cause, too far gone that you can fix it on your own, that you might need to go to an institution, a facility, a care center. And that is 100%. And I'm going to say this very clearly, that is 100% okay. And if anybody disagrees with you, tell them to call me. like,
Hmm.
it's like there is anybody who is trying to better themselves in one way or another. I applaud you 10 times over, because being self-aware enough to realize I have got this going on, it does not seem okay. I have got to find a way to fix it. You are light years ahead of a lot of other people on this planet, because so many people are like, I'm fine, or they know they're not fine and they refuse to get help. So I try to empathize with people because I refused to get help or think that, I mean, like I said, dude, I was chased by a demon, quote unquote, for years, years. And I thought it was
So I
like, oh, I'm not, yeah. Ugh. It just makes me gives me the freaking chills.
Yeah. So I think the moral of this podcast, I would have to say, is make sure, be self-aware, figure out what, what's not. I don't even want to use the word normal, because we're normal.
No.
We're just suffering through an illness. And so just be self-aware, realize that, hey, we're all going through something. Is this something that I need to take care of with a professional? If
Yeah.
you're thinking of harming yourself or harming someone else or anything like that, you need to go see someone. And I mean, you talking to Logan or talking to me, that's only going to help you to one point. I mean, talking to a professional is so vital.
Yeah.
I think that is something that we really need to stress and not be embarrassed of. And then also just, love the ones around you. What do you think?
I would say one thing that really irks me is we've all known celebrities that have ended their own life. And sometimes we talked about this. We talked like Robin Williams. No one saw that coming. And unfortunately, there is a lot of people that it happens every single day to normal, quote unquote, normal people, just like us. See people who had no idea, or even people that people even saw it coming. The thing is, and I will say this till I'm red in the face. It is not the easy way out. People who say that, like I've got words for people who think that. They think that it's an easy way out. It's not. You can read stories, manuscripts, books, TED Talks of people who have attempted it and thankfully failed and have had a second chance to live, and they will all tell you that they are so glad they failed, because in that moment, so where it boils down to is nothing is so bad in this life that is worth you leaving it on your own. So message me, message Tyson. We'll the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. There's doctors. I mean, you call the ER, call 911. If you are feeling like that, call 911. They are equipped to send someone out to help you, to bring yourself in, to just stabilize you, because you're worth every breath that you take. You're worth every interaction of anybody you come across. So I don't mean to say this and not sound like it's genuine, but I genuinely care for and love everybody that I come in contact with, because even the ones that I don't like. You can love someone and not like them, because you don't know what someone's going through. You don't know what battles they have fought. And I wish everybody honestly the best. So it's just like one song that really did it for me was this Rascal Flatts song about somebody who committed suicide. Don't leave the stage in the middle of your song. So I know it's kind of cliche and kind of corny, but don't leave the stage in the middle of your song. This life is so much more worth living, and there are professionals and people who can help. So thank you guys for giving me a platform to talk about this. I think that it is so necessary for men and women to talk about this, because it goes so unheard and so silenced, and it's used to be looked upon as shameful, but it is so strong in my mind to talk about your problems and find help.
100%. I think this is a great time to just tell everyone thank you for joining us today. Thank you for allowing us to share our thoughts with you. Make sure to give us a like, and and if you have the opportunity, give us a good review on the podcast, whether you're living to ship where Spotify, through Apple or Google, or wherever you're listening to. I appreciate you guys listening, and have a wonderful day.
Yeah, thanks guys. I appreciate it.
All right, we're good. Buddy, that was really good.
Thanks,
I told
man.
everyone we would talk to everyone. The reason why I clapped everyone is the person can see it. So
yeah, no, I saw your message. Yeah, we kind of clap you guys, people who've learned the sport, so we can know where to end the actual podcast recording. So I promise I was seeing and reading a lot of your guys' messages. We just kind of continuing on with the recording. So there were so many good messages and comments in here, guys. Thank you for, I mean, I know it's 11 o'clock for me and Tyson, and I know not everybody's here in our time zone. So thank you guys that have been here the whole time listening.
Thanks, Vato. I appreciate that. But yeah, with someone like Martin, I was literally reading everything, and him feeling empty inside right now and feeling alone. What do you recommend that he does? I know what I would recommend, but let's.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had this like perfect nugget of information. I don't know, man. I like just being here and hearing that like I was in. Oh, dude, I was in your position. I mean, there was a guy that I saw on Facebook the other day, and I started following him because he is on kind of a fitness journey, and he posted a TikTok saying, "I want to die. I feel suicidal.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, but I want to." He said, "I feel like I have to." Like that's I 100% feel that. Like you feel like you don't have a choice. You feel like this is the only reason, this is the only thing that's going to work because the chemicals in your brain are just so off that you are not thinking clearly. Like human preservation, like you don't like it's like I don't mean to lessen the subject, but it's like they say that I don't know if this is a mythbuster situation or whatever, but like the human bite force, you can bite a finger like your pinky off like a carrot, but your brain won't let you, right?
Yeah.
Unless it was like a fight or flight, life or death situation. The same thing of like if your brain chemicals were correctly balanced, suicide would never be an option. And it would never be a thought because human preservation is like literally top, like fight or flight. You will save your life every single time. And so, unless you're doing it for someone else you care. So, Martin, the best thing I can say for you, man, is that I've been in your position. I have been in the like I need a sign, I need to hear something, I need something or whatever. Like the thing is that it is literally deep down inside you. The reason for you to fight and to stay is yourself. You are so effing worth every breath you take. Like the cosmic chances that you exist are so finite, it's ridiculous. Like the cosmic chances that your parents created you and you made it through that super traumatic birthing process and then made it all the way this far in your life without all the potentials of everything else going wrong, and that you're sitting here on a freaking Sunday night listening to me and my best friend talk about our problems. Like when you start breaking it down that and you start looking at gratitude, I know it's easier said than done, but like you're here for a reason. No matter what your belief system is, or no matter what creator you do or you don't believe in, like you are sitting here in this moment. Either it's because you need to hear this or someone else needed to read your message of like, hey, here's another guy that feels the same way I do, but I don't feel like I can admit that yet. So your reason tonight is yourself, because my reason was I'm not leaving my wife or kids without a husband.
Did you
So,
freeze? Okay.
yeah, like I said, I'm not leaving my wife and kids without a husband or a father. So you've got to stay. It's not a question. You've got to get yourself
So,
figured out.
did I send you that video of that psychologist, or it was an older one, probably in the 1960s video of writing down what the future is?
Yes,
Dude,
yes.
that
And
was so good. So,
visualizing.
Martin, so there's a thing, how Logan was talking about how powerful our brain is. Our brain is so powerful to the point that when you're taking a placebo, sometimes you'll heal yourself, even if it's not the right medication that you think you're taking. So your brain is so freaking powerful. So what happens is he made this comment. It's like, it sounds stupid and it doesn't sound real, but write down what you want to be. And what was it? Write down what you want to be within 5 years from now. And what are your goals? And where do you, if everything was perfect, where are you going to be in 5 years? And then you write that down and say, put it in your wallet, put it somewhere, and read it every morning and read it every day, multiple times a day. And he's like, your brain will trick itself. It'll make itself want to be that person to be able to achieve that goal. And your brain, so like you're talking about gratitude, all that, your brain if you just allow yourself to be a glass half full person and just know that, I'm grateful for my family, I'm grateful for my job, I'm grateful for Logan, I'm grateful for all this stuff, eventually your brain starts believing it.
Well, and that's the thing is, like I said, is one major thing that I learned during this whole experience of like coming to terms with the fact that I was being bipolar and then realizing what the symptoms are is that realizing that there is so much of our brain that we don't know is capable. And I'm not trying to get all conspiracy theory. I'm not trying to get all scientific. Like I actually lived this. My brain made me believe that there was a demonic figure that followed me, that he possessed me. And I'm not trying to get all religious. Like I don't care to. We promise we don't do that on this podcast. My brain was so sick, I hallucinated. And that is not a conspiracy. We know that happens. People hallucinate all the time, whether it's on a drug or on a substance or whatever. My brain did that without it. I mean, obviously it had the help of Adderall, but that's what I'm saying is that your brain chemicals can be so off that it is capable of, I mean, what's the Harry Potter quote, right? Terrible, but great things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Voldemort, he did great things. They were terrible, but they were great. Like great in the sense of like magnificently, like just different than what people can perceive. So my point being is that trying to focus on gratitude or like finding that healthy path, like your brain is capable of this side of the spectrum or this side of the spectrum. You want to kind of live in the middle, but like, dude, I didn't want to talk about this on the recorded podcast. I mean, we'll maybe just kind of like for the members only type people that are sitting here listening. One of the treatments that I'm on, it's not 100% FDA approved, but it's also perfectly legal. Okay, I still have a CDL. I'm doing ketamine treatments in my doctor's office under nurse's supervision, and that helps rebalance naturally the chemicals in my brain to where I don't need as much medication. It works so well for me and other bipolar people I've talked to that are doing it because it helps balance out that fight or flight sensor. It helps balance out those chemicals and almost trick your brain into like producing the correct chemicals naturally to protect yourself to be more of a balanced individual. I mean that's what I'm saying is that like, oh my gosh, we found this, ketamine is normally used for anesthesia for like surgeries. And then they found out like, hey, it has this other application. It actually really helps people who suffer from bipolar and from anxiety and because introduced in different small, tiny doses over 6 to 8 week periods over this many, it has been a life changer for me. But I don't promote that on like, because it is one of those things where it's like, you should really just talk to your doctor about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it has been a game changer for me because it's literally just brain chemicals, man. Like it's crazy what I have. You want to go down the rabbit hole, just go down the rabbit hole on YouTube of how the human brain works and like how it can disconnect and recreate different connections inside your freaking brain. It's a supercomputer. Your brain is literally a supercomputer. Like if one small thing is off, you could be done in an instant. I mean, a stroke, a heart attack, things like that. And your brain literally is keeping everything going. So you've got to, your brain health has got to be number one. And I'm a huge proponent of that.
This, before we get to Mike's question, this is a great segue just to the point that on Friday at noon, we are going to have Dr. Hawkins.
Yes.
She is a expert on food disorders, eating disorders, and what it can do to the human mind, depending on what we're doing to it, like what food does to us and all this kind of stuff. So, Martin and all those who are listening and are interested, we're going to have a really, really good opportunity to meet someone who literally, she is an expert. People around the world come and see her and talk to her. And I luckily was into one of her discussions, and I talked to her, and oddly enough, she knew who we were.
She found out she'd heard some of our podcasts. That was crazy.
It was just so weird to me, but she was honored, and we're definitely honored to have her on. So we're really, really excited. Speaking of which, I have a book that we're supposed to read. It's a small, tiny book. It's $5. It is called
send it to me.
Life Beyond Your Eating Disorder. And so it's just it's a small book, and it's just something that we can kind of understand what she's talking about so that we can have an educated, like a more of a good conversation rather than ask the basic questions.
Which, I mean, we will talk about this more next week when we talk to her, but an eating disorder is a mental health issue.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just manifested in a different way. And that's what I'm saying is that, like, the more we go down that rabbit hole of mental health, it literally, it spider webs into so many different possibilities, both positive and negative. And the human brain is capable of so much. So kind of Mike's question there of like,
Yeah.
the CBD or the CBD, sorry, CBT, how long that took to work. I worked with a guy, where I grew up in Sacramento and where my wife and I were living for probably the better part of a year. Just going through everything. Some days we were just sitting there talking about nothing that had to do with anything with CBT, like, cognitive behavioral therapy. It was just him letting me process. Like, it was probably the first 2 months was me just like processing that I was bipolar, because I was like, no, I'm fine. Like, I'm fine. I'm that guy. Like, I've got my stuff figured out. And he's just like, buddy, you don't. Like, you don't. Like, you're sitting here in my office. Like, your insurance is paying me to sit here and talk to you to help you figure out why your brain is working the way it is, and helped me to literally, it's kind of like Shrek, like peel back the layers of the onion that was my brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, it's
Yeah, a
nice to
lot of
see
the
him.
eating disorders eating disorders have to do with a lot of different types of personality disorders and depression, anxiety. It all feeds off one another, and it's just, dude. When she talked about social media and how it affects people and all that, it's just like I am so excited to get her on. And just
Yeah.
this is not beard related at all, but I feel like it's important for men to understand this, especially when the social media attacks our daughters and our wives more than anybody else.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the whole reason you and I started this podcast. Is not just because you and I have a good time talking with each other, but we felt like, yeah, we call it Dad Bods and Beards because that's what both of us have, right? But we feel
Uh-huh.
like we wanted to give a voice to the average guy and even, for the women that do, like, because apparently we have women that listen to us, of what goes on in
Yeah.
the average guy's brain. Like, I know you and I come across as very confident guys at times, and I think because you and I have both gone through our own crazy ass battles of stuff. But I
Mm-hmm.
think that your life that you've lived with your experiences and my life that I've lived with my experiences, and that how we kind of got brought together as friends, it just was like, I think we have a really good opportunity to like start helping break down the barriers of like dudes who don't need to freaking suffer with the crap we tell ourselves we can fix on our own, or like have the different perspective. Dude, I've learned so much from you on like parenting because you have got full blown adults and teenage kids, and I've got a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. So like, and then I've learned, I mean, just in the beard community in general, and just just being on social media and talking to you guys in the chat and like meeting some of you guys in person from time to time, like I am a better person for it. So it's like this podcast is almost therapeutic for me. You know what I mean?
Facts, Martin.
Yeah, man. Dude, I like I said, I hate the like, oh, I know what you mean, because people said that to me all the time and I knew deep down they didn't. I I took pictures of my suicide notes that I wrote my wife, thinking that I wanted to hang on to them. And thankfully, I deleted them. And I read those things over and over and over. And I remember in the moment, the conviction of writing those, I was so absolute in my decision. I felt it was the only way. And I know it's cliche to say, like, you've got to fight, because sometimes the only person who's going to fight for you is yourself. It's just it's so cliche, but anybody who's been at that point where you either attempted or you were ready to attempt or you just had those feelings, there will come, I promise you, there will come and I'm talking directly to you, Martin, and I hope that's okay. There will come a time in your life you will look back on these messages that you're sending us now, or any other thought, that you're going to be like, man, I can't believe that I thought that, but I understand why I thought that, and I'm so glad I am at where I'm at today, because I'm living proof right here, dude. I had the intrusive thoughts, not social media intrusive thoughts of like, oh, I should slap this person or I should run my shopping cart into that person's ankles. I'm talking about life-ending intrusive thoughts of on my drive home from work, I could make this look like an accident and it wouldn't even look like suicide. But I would still accomplish what I felt I needed to do in that moment, which was take my own life, but it would look like an accident. That's the intrusive thoughts that I had to battle every single day. Like, if I'm driving home, I'm driving 70 miles an hour on the freeway. If I veered and hit that center median, I'm sure, and I went off or went through that guardrail or, or if I was doing this or I went to the wrong part of town and picked a fight on purpose, it would just look like I was in the wrong spot at the wrong time. Like, dude, my brain went so many different ways, but I promise you, when you are in those dark spots, you're going to look back one day and you're going to be so grateful that you worked through that.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like I said, I'll have to, Martin, I'll have to find you. Find me on, or send me a message on Instagram on DMs. I've got some stuff I'd like to send you that really helped me because you got to, we talked about this last week, Tyson. You can go in the room and you kind of have to force yourself to find the things you're grateful for, and you fake it till you make it with gratitude. And I promise you, man, holy crap. You start saying, "Hey, I'm grateful." Dude, there were days that I had to say, I'm grateful that I was able to feed my family today. I'm grateful that I was able to make it through work today without crying or feeling like I wanted to die. I'm grateful that I was able to pay this bill without asking my dad for help. So that there are some days I'm far more grateful and there are some days that I am not. But I'm telling you that freaking gratitude drug will change your life, because when you're in that pit of just despair, you will seriously just keep spiraling down because all you're thinking is the negative thoughts, the things I hate, the things I hate about myself, the things I can't stand, the things I wish I could fix. But the minute you start clawing backwards on that spiral of like, yeah, but you know what? I'm still freaking here and I'm super grateful for that. And, I talked to so-and-so and they said, oh my gosh, it was so great talking to you. Even though you're fighting that inner battle, you made a positive impact on that person's life. Be grateful for that. Be grateful that you ate today. Be grateful that you woke up today. Be grateful that you have a roof over your head. Be grateful you got shoes on your feet. Be grateful, like literally pick the smallest things. Be grateful that you drank 2 glasses of water when the day before you only drank freaking Dr. Pepper. Like I'm spiraling thinking about it. But yeah, find me on Instagram and shoot me a message. I've got some stuff I'd like to send you.
Awesome. Well, appreciate everyone joining us tonight. I know this was more of an impromptu live. We were planning on doing our podcast tonight, but I felt this was more of a powerful one. It was a serious talk conversation. We didn't do any laughing. We didn't do anything like that, but I appreciate you guys joining us tonight. And we're always around, like I said. Yeah, I'm glad, Logan, you're here. I'm grateful that you're here.
Me too, man.
And yeah.
Thank you.
Dude, a year and a half ago when we met, who would have thought?
Yeah, dude, I was coming out of a struggling time at that point. I mean, TikTok was kind of like I told you, it was I was forcing myself to try to make people happy because I wasn't. And
facts.
Dude, this will be one of the last things I'll say. That's why I'm so angry, I think, about some of the governments of the world trying to ban TikTok, because dude, it has changed my life in so many positive ways. And I know that sounds kind of lame to say that it's a social media app, but dude, it's like, it literally found me one of my best friends. It has made me such a more positive person. And I wish I need to make a montage and ask these people if it's okay. Like the messages I get of like, you are the best part of my day. And I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back, but it's like things stupid videos, Tyson, that you and I make together. I'm like, oh my gosh, YouTube every freaking time I see it. And I'm just like, all right, that's a win. I'm super grateful for that. That person is laughing and smiling because me and Tyson made ourselves look like a freaking idiot. But
so it's on a dumb pretending like you're going to go to the bathroom on a door, lip syncing. That was hilarious. Candace literally was in tears laughing so hard because of that.
Well, the best part is like just my wife we grew up in the High School Musical era. She was like into Zac Efron and stuff when she was younger. So like seeing her husband and then like his friend lip syncing about being in such an intense bromance that I can't even go to the bathroom without you. And then it's High School Musical. So you're just like, oh my gosh. So,
Vato,
anyways,
let me hear you and ask. Do you feel comfortable about this staying up?
like on the podcast or just on the YouTube channel?
No, this is going to be on podcast, yeah, but on YouTube.
Yeah, 100%. If it can
Yeah, then Vato, what's
help
up?
anybody and people would like it, then I'm 100% for that because I'm not. I spent years being ashamed of being bipolar, and last year I made an announcement on my social media, and I've felt so much better ever since. So it was only a year ago that I actually like admitted to people that I was. So if it helps, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm eating Omega gummies. I had to keep it up.
Yeah,
It's a tradition.
you and your own dang gummies, man. Laughter is therapeutic.
No, but seriously, Vato. Yes, was it yesterday? No, it was Friday. Friday.
I don't know.
Friday.
That I was at
When
the
we were doing
barbershop?
our stream. Yeah. Dude, Vato, him and I were together for about 7-8 hours. We laughed so hard with the dumb things we were doing. Like,
I still have a couple of TikToks in my draft that I need to post on mine and yours and like YouTube shorts. And I need to edit that video. All I'm going to say is that we were trying to tape something on a fan that was too tall for either one of us to get to. And Tyson was
so hard.
hell bent on me getting on his shoulders. I mean, I've lost some weight, but I still weigh 250. Like, and he was like, get on my shoulders. It'll be fine. And I'm like, I'm about to pee my pants. One of the barbers is videotaping us. There's a dude in the chair getting his hair cut. Like he's laughing his freaking butt off at these two grown men acting like freaking kids. It was,
And
yeah,
then,
man.
you know, the TikToks where everyone's has a water bottle spinning. That's what he's talking about. So it's just me and Logan, and he's filming us. And I took mine off, and so I'm not getting hit. And I'm like, Logan, back up a little bit. Back up. Keep going. Keep going.
Well, the worst part is I backed up so far I was outside the frame, so the camera didn't even pick up me getting just straight ear hole by
But
the
you
water
got
bottle.
destroyed because you
Dude,
left that pretty full.
It was I like my ear was ringing for 10 minutes, but yeah.
But anyway, appreciate you guys all. Yeah, I know. I just
Yeah.
But
you know what?
absolutely.
I appreciate that, but at the same time, I mean, I know not everybody feels the same way. I don't take offense to it. But at the same time, I'm in a different place than I was 5-6 years ago. So I think that self-aware comment, Vato is very, very kind and empathetic. So I mean, I appreciate that. It doesn't really bother me, but you never know who it might. So I think that's an appropriate. Like,
You know
not
what
everybody's
really
a
does bother
snowflake,
me?
but it's appropriate. What?
Depressed, panic attack.
Yeah.
Where I have a specific person in my life that goes through real panic attacks to the point where they hit themselves and hurt themselves, and they actually get so panicky they'll pass out, and then they'll be at school and stuff like that, and they'll say, a teacher, this is part of my thing, I'm having a panic attack, I need to leave. And then, oh, you're okay, because they always hear panic attack. Oh, I'm having a panic attack. No, you're just stressed. You're not, like, when someone's having a true panic attack, let them do their thing. And that really bothers me because panic attack is used a lot.
Yeah, and I think things like that just comes with more mental health awareness.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And like I said, there's people that will go their entire lives with no issues, and then something will happen, like a situational depression or anxiety, where a death in the family, or you're losing your business, the economy, you're losing your house, you get hit with a lawsuit. Like you can end up spiraling because natural human emotions are okay to feel.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's okay to be depressed. It's okay to be anxious. It's okay to have a panic attack, because that is your brain trying to tell you something. My brain was trying to tell me for years, like, dude, I don't know what's reality and what is not. So I'm just playing the whole spectrum here to try and find some balance. Sometimes you need some help. Sometimes you can work through that. Sometimes, people, they get divorced and then they go through a depressive state, or anyways, we can go on forever.
That's what I was like.
But yeah, I think it's yeah. I'm like, we've tried to end this like 15 times, but then like you say something and I say something, and someone makes a great comment. We're like, oh, I have an idea. Like, so no, you guys have all been freaking great. This was therapeutic for me. Like, it's
Dude, it was
good to get
amazing.
these things out. So
I hope
I don't know. I
people
keep my
listen
camera
and,
keeps
and
shaking because I'm like, what?
whoa.
Whoa. We should have been doing that the whole time. I hate this. I hate the freaking zoom in, man.
But I
So,
appreciate you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. It's 11:30 here, so those who are in the
yeah.
East Coast, dude, I can't believe you're watching. Thank you. Have a wonderful Labor Day, and you know it's gonna.
Yeah.
What do you? No, we're going to stop. All right. Have a good night, guys.
Okay.
See
Bye.
ya.
Love you. Bye.